Okay, so we are live. Hi everyone, I'm Annabel and I'm here with Libby Page. Thank you for joining us today, Libby.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
We'll begin the Q&A soon, but as people are joining, it would be great if you could introduce yourself in the comments, like your name, where you're coming from. It would be really nice to see that. I'm Annabel, like I said, and I'm tuning in from London, and I'm here with Libby.
Hi, and I'm from Somerset.
We've been talking about how cold it is all of a sudden in our respective locations.
Yeah,
I think it's everywhere. Yeah, we're both in our knitted jumpers now. It has really changed. But yeah, if you just like to drop in a comment, say hi, that would be great. We've just been having a little chat before we started, and we thought it would be really nice to kick off the session with an icebreaker question to get everyone involved in the chat. Obviously, Libby's book that we will be focusing the session on today is the Lido, and that's all about outdoor swimming and kind of the benefits of swimming. So we wanted to ask you all, what is or has been your favorite place to swim in the world? Libby, if it would be great if you could kick us off. What is your favorite place to swim?
Well, I think given the location of my book, The Lido, I have to say Brockwell Lido in Brixton in South London always holds a very special place in my heart. The fact that it inspired that book that kind of went on to change my life, really. But since writing the book, I have moved to Somerset, as I mentioned. So I do have some local places near me that I really love. I swam just yesterday there's a place called Vobster, which is a quarry that's filled in with water, and you can do scuba diving there, but also open water swimming as well. And it's beautiful, all surrounded by trees with lots of wildlife, and it's a very peaceful place to swim. I love it there.
Oh, that sounds amazing. On my summer bucket list this year was to swim in Hampstead Heath Lido, like the open pools.
Yeah.
I just realised that I never actually got around to doing it. I've only just realised that I never ticked that off. So
I do love it there as well. I used to swim in the ladies' pond quite a lot when I lived in London, and it's very magical, that sense of just being surrounded by nature, and so just such a unique experience. And I must admit, this time of year, autumn is my favorite time to swim, because it's just getting a bit colder and you've got all the autumn leaves on the surface of the water. It's really really special.
Yeah, I do want to get into outdoor swimming, especially since reading the Lido, but I don't know how cold it will be. I don't know if I want to make the investment in a wetsuit just yet. So do you think it's too cold right now to go in a normal swimming costume?
So I wear just a swimming costume, but I guess, I've kind of built up acclimatization to the water. You can get, which I've actually got one of, which is sort of like a wetsuit but without legs, so like a neoprene swimsuit with long arms, and things like wearing neoprene gloves and socks make a big difference as well, and a woolly hat as well. All those things, and a nice mug of tea afterwards to warm up. So all those things make a difference.
We've got some people in the chat. Irene, hello Irene, and Annie. Annie says, good morning, I loved reading the Lido. Thanks for joining us, Annie. If you've joined as we've been talking, if you could just introduce yourself in the chat, that would be great. We're talking about our favorite places to swim in the world. It can be where you go now or where you've been in the past. I'm trying to think about mine. I feel like I should say I'm from Swansea, which obviously we have some of the best beaches in the country, in my humble opinion. But I probably wouldn't say the beaches at Swansea because it's so cold. The water is just freezing. So even though I do like going for a dip in the summer, it's just a bit cold.
For me, though, that's part of the enjoyment, is the sort of buzz of the cold water. But I have swum in some amazing places, on holidays and things as well. I always, whenever I go anywhere, I feel like I have to suss out the swimming places. That's a big part of the draw for me.
I think it's once you get your shoulders under, isn't it? It's just that dip that you have to do. We've got Diane. Hi, Diane. Diane's asked, do you swim in the sea? Do you ever swim in the sea, Libby?
Yeah, I do. And funnily, you mentioned Swansea. My sister lives in Wales, and whenever I go to visit, I'll swim in the sea there. Yeah, I think just because where I live, I'm not that close to the sea. I tend to swim in sort of rivers and lakes and lidos. But yeah, absolutely. Anytime I'm at the beach, I will go in the water.
Sian has said she's listening from my drive to the Outer Hebrides to do some bucket list beach swims.
Fantastic.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think that will also be very cold. So it'll be great for Libby, not so great for me, maybe.
So my third book, The Island Home, was set in the Inner Hebrides, and I did go and research on one of the islands there and did some swimming. And it was cold, but it wasn't actually as bad as I was expecting. I went actually this sort of time of year. But yeah, just beautiful, beautiful part of the world. So I hope you have a great trip.
Yeah, enjoy, Sian, and thanks for joining in. Sian said the Gulf Stream, apparently. So that must be where where it comes from. Thanks for tuning in on your drive. Like, it's great to have you here. But my favorite thing, I realized I never actually answered that question. My favorite place to swim. I really like where I've been on holiday before to Ibiza, and it's there's just this little sort of cove beach, and the water is, I think because it's in sort of a cove, the water is really warm, and you just can step in, and it's just so lovely and clear. I think that would be my favorite place to swim. But I guess that's not really proper swimming. It's just kind of bobbing about.
Honestly, I'd say especially in the autumn and winter when I swim, I'm more just dipping, just getting myself in the water. It's more about the experience of getting in the water, being surrounded by nature, being outdoors. I'm not exactly doing epic long swims. I feel like I can't even really call myself a swimmer. I am much more of a dipper. Lovely about that as well.
I was walking past, I live in London near Canary Wharf, so I was walking through Canary Wharf the other day, and they've got like a open swimming place there now, and it's in the Thames, but they must have like sectioned off an area and somehow made it clean. But obviously I've read the book in advance of this session, so all these different things that I'm noticing now, people swimming and like everyone wearing their caps, bobbing about, and then huddled by the shack of like a little hot flask afterwards. It just seems really nice, and now I want to start doing it too.
It's that community aspect that I think is just as nice as the actual getting in the water. It's the sort of going and having a cup of tea afterwards, the people that you meet either in the changing rooms at a Lido or on the side of the riverbank or wherever it is that you're swimming, and just a real mix of different people. That's what I really love about outdoor swimming.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get on to talking about that in the session. So we are starting to get like a couple questions in, so it might be a good time to get started with the Q&A proper. But before we start that, I'll just say hi again, everyone, and welcome to our Q&A with Libby Page. If you missed the beginning, I'm Annabel, and I'm here from Listening Books. We're an audiobook charity, and we provide audiobook access to anyone who has a disability, illness, mental health condition, or learning difficulty that affects their ability to read. So if you think we could help you access books, please do check us out. I think the team will be signposting our details throughout the session. So just check us out. We do these live Q&As here at the Virtual Village Hall with authors, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Libby Page.
Hi. Yeah, it's so great to be here with you and to chat about books and and swimming, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, I am going to give a quick intro to Libby just to start us off. So Libby Page is a Sunday Times best-selling author of 5 feel-good novels, including The Lido and its recently published sequel, The Lifeline. As well as being a best-selling author, Libby is also a swimmer and an optimist, and her books are full of positive, uplifting energy, the power of friendship, and the power of community. So those are things that we're going to be talking about today. We're really excited to find out more. So thanks again, Libby, for joining us.
It's great to be here.
So we'll get started with the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions, please start popping those in the chat, and we'll get through as many as we can. But just to start us off, I thought we could start with the place where it all began for you, Libby, the Lido. If you could just give us a quick intro to the Lido for anyone who hasn't read or listened yet, that would be amazing.
Yeah, of course. So the Lido is set in Brixton in South London, and it tells the story of 86-year-old Rosemary and 26-year-old Kate as they come together to save their beloved Lido from closure. And they form an unlikely friendship along the way, I think brought together by their love of the Lido, but also their shared experience of loneliness. They are both in a place of feeling a little bit isolated for very different reasons, but yeah, it's their kind of friendships brings them together, and I guess makes them realize how we all have a lot more in common with one another than we perhaps might initially think.
Thank you. We do have a couple of questions already, which is amazing. So Diana's asked, if the Lido is about swimming, what are your other books about? I've just downloaded them all.
Great, amazing. Thank you for downloading all. That's wonderful to hear. Okay, so I'll try and I actually did a video on my social media a while ago where I tried to describe all of my books in 10 seconds or less, which was quite challenging. Maybe I'll allow myself slightly more than 10 seconds. So yes, we've got the Lido, then the 24-hour cafe, which is set in a 24-hour cafe. So a sort of all-night diner based on a real diner in Liverpool Street in London. And it's about the friendship between two of the waitresses who work there. And also, so their friendship has really hit a turning point. And it's about how they kind of navigate that sort of disruption to their friendship, but also about all the people who come and go in the cafe over a 24-hour period. I think most writers are very nosy, and I'm fascinated by the idea of, just different people's stories when you're out and about in a cafe or somewhere like that. Then we have the Island Home, which is set, as I said, on a remote island, a tiny island in the Inner Hebrides. And it's about a woman called Lorna who grew up on the island but hasn't been back in many, many years. And she goes back for the first time with her teenage daughter and is forced to kind of reconcile with her family and deal with secrets from her past. But it is still, focused on friendship and community, and I hope overall uplifting as well. Then we have the Vintage Shop, which is set in a vintage shop in Frome in Somerset, where I now live, and it's about the story of a yellow vintage dress that has a really special story that brings together a group of women who form friendship as they try to uncover the secrets about this dress's past. And then we have my most recent book, The Lifeline, which is a follow-up to the Lido, which sees the main character, Kate, 5 years in the future. And she's a new mum. She's really struggling to adjust to that kind of time in her life. And it's also about a mental health nurse called Phoebe, who is so busy looking after the other people that she's really forgotten to look after herself, and they come together around a river swimming group. So yes, those are my 5 books. I would say that things like friendship, community, a touch of romance appear in all of them. So if those sound your kind of books, then hopefully you will enjoy those as well.
Thank you for that whistle-stop tour of your books. That was great. We've got a question from Paz, who has asked, where is your favourite place to swim?
So we were talking a little bit about this at the very start. So the Brockwell Lido in Brixton has a very special place in my heart, having inspired my first book, and that really having transformed my life. So I always have to say there. More recently, now that I live in Somerset, I have some wild swimming spots that I really love. So there's a river swimming spot called Farley Hungerford, which partly inspired the location of my book, The Lifeline. And there's also a a quarry that I swim in. So a quarry that's been filled in with water called Vobster, and you can do scuba diving there. So it's quite funny, as you're swimming, you can see all these bubbles coming up from underneath of people scuba diving and free diving and paddleboarding. And I love that sense of lots of different people coming together to enjoy this really beautiful spot. And there are peregrines that nest in the cliffs around the water, so I often see them when I swim there, which is really an amazing experience. So those are some of my favorites.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I want to go there now. You mentioned then Brockwell Lido, which obviously is the Lido that you write about in the Lido. So what made you decide to write about like a real life place rather than make up a Lido?
I think as a writer, I'm always really inspired by real places. And I guess I liked the idea of writing about, I think Brixton as a place has such a specific feel to it, specific community, such a kind of rich, vibrant place. And so I think rather than making up somewhere, I was really keen to actually write about that and try and bring that to the page. I guess there's part of me that really likes the idea of readers being able to actually go to some of the places that I've written about. I don't know about you all listening, but certainly if I read a book that might feature what appears to be a real place, I'm then really keen to look it up and like maybe go and check it out. So I think I like that aspect as well, of that you can go and it might maybe inspire you to go and visit Brockwell Lido. So I think that's part of it. That said, I do always bring my own kind of creative license to it. I think that's one of the great things about writing fiction, is that I can take a real place as a starting point, but then add my own things as well. So like my book, The Island Home, which is based on a real island in the Inner Hebrides. But I was like, actually, this island doesn't have a lighthouse on it. And I love lighthouses. So the lighthouse in my book, the island in my book is going to have a lighthouse. And, things like that, I can add my own kind of spin to it as well. So I kind of like doing a combination of the two, taking a real place that people can visit as inspiration, but then also adding my own touch to it, I guess.
Yeah, I think I definitely will visit Brockwell Lido. My friend actually swims there, so I think I will join her on a trip, because it sounds amazing.
It's a lovely spot.
Yeah, and also in the book, your descriptions of Brixton are just so nice. Like, it's really, I don't know, it just really shows the kind of local community that you have there, which is really important in a big city like London, to have these little sort of pockets of community. So why do you think these are so important? You do really focus on that in your books.
Well, I think when I wrote the Lido, I'm originally from the southwest, so Somerset, Dorset, Wiltshire area, but I moved to London for university. And I think when I was writing the Lido, I perhaps hadn't quite found my feet in the city yet, like one of the main characters, Kate. But I think it was actually partly through my time living in Brixton that I came to realise, exactly like you described, there are these pockets of community. And actually, I now think of London not as one big city, but as lots of different neighbourhoods all kind of stitched together. And for me, as soon as I realised that, it became much more manageable. And I thought, actually, I don't have to fit in the whole of London. I just need to fit in my little pocket and find have my local places that I go to and have that sense of becoming part of a community. So that was quite eye-opening to me, and something I really wanted to write about. And I think since then, community generally is such an important thing in my writing and in my own life. I think feeling part of a community and feeling, I guess, like you've got roots and that you've got people, now I live in a small town, and just whenever I go out, I bump into people, and I know people in the shops and the cafes, and it makes me feel such a sense of well-being to have that feeling of connection with people around me. And I think sometimes a lot of people don't necessarily have that, and I guess I wanted to write about that to sort of encourage people that, that it is out there, and it is possible to feel that kind of connection.
Yeah, we've got a question from Diane. Have you plans for further books? How about a village in Essex trying to save their much-loved village hall?
Oh, that sounds a wonderful idea. And you know what? I feel like that sounds like a writer who's come up with that idea. So I feel like you should write that book. It's something that's true to perhaps something that you're experiencing. But yeah, I mean, I am working on other books, and I think community will always feature. Unfortunately, I can't talk in too much detail about it, but my next book I should be announcing a bit more about over the coming months. But yeah, I think community, friendship, and this idea of really fighting for the places that bring people together, that mean a lot within our communities, is something that's very important to me.
Yeah, these places are really important. You obviously talk about the Lido, but also libraries, like community hubs, village halls, places like that. So why is it that you think these places are so important to people and communities?
I think so many reasons. I think often those community spaces are places where people come together who might not otherwise meet. So that was partly the inspiration for the Lido, was swimming and realizing that in the changing rooms, you're bumping into people of all different ages, all different backgrounds, and also that there's this sort of unifier about it. Like, you're all there to swim, and it doesn't really matter, what job you do outside of being at the in the outside world, or what background you're from. You're all there sharing a common interest. And I think it's the same with libraries and other community spaces. Like, you're all there because you've got this kind of thing in common, but it sort of strips away the markers of your outside life, which I think is really special, and allows people to form connections who, like I said, might not otherwise connect. I think there's something about places where, especially libraries, like, where you don't have to spend a lot of money. Like, you can just go and I use my library so much, and especially having a young child, to have somewhere where you can just go and feel welcomed, and that even in the library they're very much like, it doesn't matter if he makes noise, like, it's fine, everyone's welcome here. And I think that's so special, because there aren't endless places like that, and it's such a shame that so many are being closed down. I feel like we really would lose so much, if Lidos and libraries and village halls, if they weren't there. I think it would be really sad, and a lot of people would feel like they didn't have that place where they can just go and connect with other people. So yeah, I definitely think they're very, very important, and we should champion them, really.
Well, we're literally in a virtual village hall now, and it's so important having all these people, like, who can come together, talk in the chat, learn about books, learn about different hobbies. Virtual village hall do so many different sessions, so like languages, crafts, fitness. So it's just a place where people can go and meet new people and do new things that they wouldn't normally be able to do.
And amazing, that can happen virtually as well. I think that's so fantastic, in recent years, to have that technology that allows us to connect with people, from all over the world, people who might not necessarily, go out and, go to a physical space. I think is, it's just wonderful. And I certainly feel the benefit of that. I guess I feel it a little bit in terms of, my kind of social media and things like that, where I feel like I'm connecting with readers who I might not be able to meet in person, is such a special thing. So yeah, it's things like this I think are so important.
Yeah. We've got a question from Shan. Your mother is also now a published author. How honest is yours and her feedback about each other's books, or do you keep your thoughts to yourself?
Oh, yes. So my mum's debut novel came out a couple of years ago, when she just turned 60. And she's since, so her third book has just come out. I guess, to be honest, we kind of keep things a bit separate. I think first and foremost, we're mum and daughter, and I think there's something nice about kind of keeping your work separate from your sort of family relationship. But yeah, certainly, I mean, she's been so supportive of my writing over the years. I've been writing since I was tiny, and she always kind of would encourage me and cheer me on, and I hope I've been doing the same for her as well. So yeah, I think it's cheering each other on, but also keeping that family separate from career as well. I don't know if anyone here has does jobs that are similar to their families, but it'd be interesting to see. It's keeping those things a bit separate as well.
Yeah, you definitely have to, I think, keep a level of separation. One thing, it's not really related, but it's reminded me of Rosemary and Kate's relationship in the Lido. Like, obviously, they're at very different places in life. They have quite a big age gap, but they're still able to become really brilliant friends. So why did you decide to write about this sort of unlikely relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much that people of different ages can gain from one another, and certainly through my swimming especially, I have made friends of all different ages, and I so value those friendships. I think, yes, it's wonderful having friends who are kind of going through exactly the same life stages as you to be able to kind of share where you're at, but I think there's also something so wonderful about having friends or being part of a community where there are people who are at different stages, and to be able to go, oh, okay, so this is to come, or to share their sort of wisdom and advice, I think is really enriching. And yeah, I guess I also wanted to get across this idea that I think we all have so much more in common than perhaps we think we do. We might think, oh, because someone's a different age or a different gender or whatever, that we might not have that much in common, but ultimately we are human beings. And I tried in their friendship and in their characters to get across that this shared experience of loneliness that they have, they're from very different reasons. Rosemary's from being recently widowed, and Kate from just really struggling to find her feet in the city. But yeah, that feeling of loneliness is universal. Whatever the reason, whatever your age, that feeling of what it's like to be lonely is the same. And I guess that's what I was trying to get across, is that these emotions that we go through in life are universal, and they might be for different reasons, but whatever age we are, whatever background, we do have that commonality. And I think it's so important to recognize that and to learn from each other. And I definitely feel like my life is enriched from the friends and community I have that are at different life stages to me. It's so great to have that different perspective, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I love the moments in the book of like Rosemary's wisdom kind of making me think and Kate think differently about how they are. So there's a specific moment that I really liked when Kate is fussing over her makeup in the mirror after going to the Lido, and Rosemary's like, I wish that she would know that when you get to this age, like, you're beautiful and you don't have to worry about things like this. I just wish that Rosemary wishes that Kate could see that and not have to fuss over things like this. And it's so nice to be able to get that perspective that you don't normally get when you're only friends with people your own age.
Absolutely. And definitely I'd say that that point specifically is something that swimming has been so helpful for me with, in terms of that kind of confidence and body image and everything like that. I think we can all have those kind of issues, and yet when you are in a swimming pool changing room and you see bodies of all different types, and realizing there is no one like normal body, and that everyone's amazing, and also that everyone's there just to swim. Like, they're not there to look at you, they're there to just do this activity. And yeah, I definitely would say that it's maybe some of the older swimmers who have that kind of confidence and carefree attitude that I, especially, a few years ago when I wrote the book, like, really aspired to. I hadn't kind of got there yet, but really wanted that. So yeah, I think the combination of swimming, but also those friendships of different life stages, has really helped kind of open my eyes in the way that it does with Kate in the Lido.
We've got a few more questions. Diane, this is related to what we were talking about before. Diane's asked, do you think writing runs in the family then? I do accounts and my daughter does accounts too, so maybe it does.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because in some ways, I think of, my family, so my sister is a doctor, which is obviously quite different from what I do. She's very scientific, but she is also creative, and I would say that creativity, I think, very much kind of runs in our family. And I think books, I grew up surrounded by books. Like my grandfather was a big reader, my mum was a big reader, and I think that does have an impact. I wanted to become a writer because I loved reading, and I still think of myself first and foremost as a reader. Like I just consume books, and it was as a child when I kind of twigged, oh, someone's written those books, and like that's an actual job to be an author, and that came so much from being surrounded by books growing up. So I think it's probably a combination of maybe like a kind of spark of creativity, but also that kind of upbringing. But who knows? I mean, my son is 3 now, and I guess it's too early to see. He loves books, but we'll see sort of whether he is. He's funny. He's at that age now where I don't want to say he started telling lies, but he tells these very elaborate stories. And I kind of feel like I don't want to discourage it, because to me, I'm like, he's a storyteller. He's going to be a storyteller. When he says like, oh, yesterday I went on a plane and I went to this, that. I'm like, no, you've never been on a plane in your life. So who knows whether it's going to run in the family. We'll see as he gets older.
Oh, that's so cute. Diane's also asked, did you have to try hard to get published in the first place? Was there a lot of rejection or rewriting?
Yes, yes is the short answer. So my kind of journey to getting published, I knew very little about getting published. I wrote the book, and then I was like, okay, I'd like to try and get this out there. And I found out that you have to get an agent before you get a publisher, that the agent, represents you and sends your book out to publishers. So that was the first step. But yeah, I mean, I got a lot of rejections over the course of about a year. I was sending out my book to lots of different agents. I mean, dozens. I got dozens of some that were just flat out no's, some that were, we really like your writing, but it's not quite the right fit for us. Some who just never replied. And that was really hard. I work as a writing coach now as well, and I see people going through that process, and I just so feel for them, because I really know how hard that is. And I used to be refreshing my email like every 30 seconds in case I had an email from an agent. And it was kind of at the end of that year that I was thinking, okay, maybe it's not this book, maybe I'll write another book, maybe go back to some of the agents who've said positive things but ultimately didn't want to represent me. And then I saw that a new agency was being set up, and they were actively looking for clients. I was like, okay, this is going to be my last shot with this book. And yeah, I sent it out to my now agent. He replied to my initial email within like minutes, saying, like, I really love the sound of this concept. Can you send me the full book? And I mean, I think it was just weeks later that, he met me and represented me. And we then did some work on the book, like editing it and tweaking it to get it ready to send to publishers. And yeah, he sent it out to publishers, and like a couple of days later, I got me the publishing deal. So I think it's definitely, I think perseverance is just so important in this industry. And having since met lots of other authors through my work, I'd say that's the common thing, between published authors. It's like, that perseverance and sticking with it, and taking on board feedback. And it definitely kind of teaches you resilience, I think. So yeah, that was my kind of journey.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm really hoping that Diane is going to write this book about saving the village hall.
Yeah, me too. I want to read that.
Yeah, so we're hoping for you, Diane.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paz has asked, love the cover art for the Lido. Did you have a hand in that? It's so evocative and makes you want to swim.
Oh, well, it's great to hear you like the cover. I really love it as well. I can take no credit for it whatsoever. So the process of designing the cover, It is a collaboration in that I'm always asked to give feedback and say what I think about it. But the actual designs, I'm not a designer, I'm a words person. I think if I tried to design something, it would be really terrible. That cover especially, they showed me the design. I was just like, I have no notes. This is great. I love it. Since then, there have been times when, and I'm thinking of my most recent cover where, it is much more, and I guess over time I've got to know my readers a little bit more and feel a bit clearer on what I kind of want a cover to do. So more recently I might have said, okay, I love this, but how about we think about this? Or, I'm thinking of the cover for The Island Home. When I originally saw it, if anyone's seen it, it's got this island with little houses sort of dotted about it, and when I originally saw the image, the houses looked like little kind of Cornish cottages. And I said, this is a Scottish island. They need to look like bothies, like they need to look like Scottish houses. And so something like that, that's just a minor tweak, but that's where I can kind of bring my input. But yeah, the Lido cover, I equally love and think it's really exciting, but can take no credit for the design.
I've got the cover here. If anyone's, it's blending in. It's the same color as my green screen. Yeah, here it is.
There we go.
We've got a question from Annie. Do you have a favorite book or books?
Oh, that's so hard. I feel like it kind of changes all the time. So I feel like the recent books that I've read, there are kind of the classic ones that I love, like I love Sarah Winman is one of my favorite authors. Her first book, When God Was a Rabbit, is a very special book to me. I love David Nichols' One Day, and his most recent one as well, You Are Here, I really loved. Jojo Moyes, I love her books. And then there are kind of like the childhood books, like The Railway Children, which I just love and I go back to. That's a real comfort read of mine. And then I read a book recently called The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I don't know if anyone else has read it, which is kind of like a cozy fantasy. And I've only recently kind of got into a bit of fantasy, but it's just so heartwarming and so lovely, and I think has become a new firm favorite. So yeah, I definitely have kind of the classics that I love, and then as I read, I just fall in love with a book. I'm like, okay, this is definitely what my new favorite as well. But it's too hard to choose. Don't ask me to pick one. That's impossible.
You mentioned Sarah Winman then, and obviously I've got the book next to me, and it says on the cover, joyous and uplifting quote from Sarah Winman. That must have been amazing, having one of your favorite authors say such nice things about your book too.
It was amazing, and it was such a kind of crazy full circle moment in that I really strongly remember going to see Sarah Winman talk at the Hay Literary Festival years and years ago now. And at the time I was kind of I'd always wanted to write books, but I was feeling like a little bit lost. I'd kind of maybe given up on the idea of that ever happening. I'd read all the statistics about how few kind of authors, how few people get their books published, and I really was like, okay, this isn't going to happen for me. But I had this sort of idea for a novel about a Lido, kind of in the back of my mind, but I just didn't know. I was working full time, and I didn't know if I had the sort of confidence to really give the time to actually write it. And I saw her do this talk at Hay Festival, and she just spoke so wonderfully about writing and how if you're a writer, you just write and it's in you and you just have to do it, which if there are any writers listening, I'm sure you'll relate to, of that thing of just, it's what you do, it's what you love doing. And it was after that talk I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to write a book. And that became the Lido. And my agent that I eventually got is also her agent. So that was kind of a whole amazing full cycle of thing. And when she kindly offered the quote, it was just like, I was thinking back to the me who saw her talk those years ago and thinking that I would never have imagined that I would have ended up in this place with my book being published with her quote on it. So yeah, it was very, very special.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. Such a nice full circle moment, and like a true testament to perseverance as well. We've got some more questions. Diane's asked, what do you think of the saying, you can't judge a book by the cover? How important is it?
Oh, so this is, it's funny, isn't it? now that I am a published author, I feel like I really understand how important the covers are as a tool. The reality is there are so many books out there, and as readers, we need something that's going to, if we're going into a bookshop or kind of scrolling on our phone on, Audible or wherever, to kind of get a sense of, oh, this is a book I might enjoy. So the cover is that just quick way of communicating the feel of the book. Also maybe referencing like, okay, if you like this author, you'll probably like this author as well. So yeah, there's a lot that you have to get across in one image. The kind of the plot of the book, the feeling of the book, the genre. It's a lot, and that's why I'm so kind of in awe of cover designers, and no, I could never do that myself. But then there are, I don't know if you all feel this way, but I have definitely read books where the cover and sometimes even the kind of blurb that's used to describe it doesn't quite match up. And sometimes in a way that, I read a book and I'm like, oh, I really love this book, but it took me ages to pick it up because the cover just didn't quite speak to me. So yeah, it's definitely difficult to get right, and sometimes it can be a case of the book inside is different and you need to give it a go, but they definitely do an important job of kind of grabbing a reader and getting them to read or listen to it.
Yeah, it also works the same way, like the same way the other way around. Sometimes a book can have a beautiful cover and then you just don't really like it. Like that happens to me quite a lot. I see a book and I'm like, oh, that's stunning. Like I need to have it, and then I just don't end up really liking it.
Yeah, and that's where I think recommendations are so important. And I so value when I hear a reader who says, oh, my friend, I got into your books because my friend gave me one or like recommended them. I just I value that so much, because I don't know about you, but for me, that's where most of my reading comes from, is from a friend going, oh, you have to read this book, I absolutely loved it. Or going into my local bookshop and them saying, okay, this book, I really think, I know the kind of books you like, and I know you'll like this one. So, because then, I would just go for it, regardless of what the cover looks like. If a friend who I know has a similar reading taste to me enjoys it, I would just read whatever they put in my hands. So, I think that's so valuable, those recommendations.
Yeah, I'm definitely the same. That's just reminded me, I was in a bookshop not so long ago in Hackney, and your book was displayed. The Lido was like on display with so that's a nice little recommendation.
That's so good. Yeah.
We've got a brilliant question from Diane. Do films spoil books and stories, and would you like your stories to be made into films?
Interesting question. I'm sure we can all think of film and TV adaptations where it hasn't been quite true to the book. I don't know if it necessarily spoils the book, because I think people can make the distinction between the two, that they are separate, that, if a film perhaps isn't your favorite film, you might still want to read the book to kind of see what that's like, and the book might, you might still enjoy that. So I am, back when the Lido came out, I sold the film rights to it. That has been, I think I've come to realize that these things, A, may never happen, but B, can take a long time. So it's sort of still ongoing. So that may watch this space, that may come out as a film. I think with that, I love the idea of it being a film. I love the idea of a screenwriter or a director, people who have slightly different skill sets to me, bringing their vision to it and seeing, what they took from the book, how they imagine the characters, and bringing that to life, I think would be really wonderful to see. I think in terms of, if a film adaptation came out, it then hopefully inspiring more people to read the book, it would be really wonderful. But I think I also, accept that they are separate, that I think it's kind of the film director's vision, but then people can still go and read the book and read kind of the original thing as well. But it's hard to get right, isn't it? Because we all have our own images in our head. When we read, we're always picturing characters in a slightly different way. So it's hard to, for example, cast an actor who's going to look exactly like everyone imagined them. I think must be really, really difficult.
Yeah, I've just been like mulling over in my head like a film adaptation of the Lido, and I can really see Daisy Edgar Jones as Kate. I feel like that would be a really good like fan cast, and then Julie Walters I think would be a good Rosemary too.
And it's funny though that people will say different things, you know, and people often come to me and say, oh, so and so would be perfect for Rosemary. And I guess that's what I mean in terms of, you know, we all have those slightly different visions. And certainly when I put a book out into the world, I have to, in a way, kind of let go a bit of control. That, you know, when you're writing it, it's yours and you have such a clear vision of everything. But as soon as it's out there in the world, it belongs to readers. And in the same way that when I think of my favorite books, I have such a clear, you know, attachment to the story and impression of the characters that feels unique to me. So as an author, it's wonderful, but can be challenging as well to kind of let go of that and accept that like it's out there now. It is how people imagine these characters.
Yeah, when I was reading the Lido, I kind of pictured Rosemary as my grandma. Like, it sounds a bit weird, but that's just how I like envisioned her, like the kind of her character. Like it was my grandma, and then I kind of felt like Kate was a bit like me as well. Like I'm a young person who's recently moved to London, finding my feet. So yeah, it was kind of like me and my grandma in this little.
That's so lovely to hear, and you know, I guess that's what I hope is that people can put themselves in the shoes of the characters and really see parts of themselves reflected on the page, because certainly when I read, that's something I find so comforting, is if I see characters that recognize, you know, that I recognize myself in, or that remind me of people that are important to me. It just makes me feel like I'm that you're less alone in a way, you know, that there are people out there who have gone through similar experiences, I guess.
Yeah, and it does really make you kind of like relate to the book as well, get that bond. As like an audiobook charity, obviously, I was kind of reminded then, like when talking about the film and how other people respond to your book, when they were making the audiobook, did you find that weird at all? Like having someone read out the voice in a voice that, you know, the narrator, I think Claire Corbett, she was doing Rosemary and Kate. Was it weird having these really distinct characters in your head now having a voice?
I mean, I think it's amazing because these voices have existed inside my head, but to actually be able to hear them, you know, through my ears as opposed to just inside my head is amazing. And I mean, Claire is such a brilliant audiobook narrator, and we actually spoke, especially before because she also narrated the Lifeline, the sequel to the Lido, and we chatted a bit before then about kind of making sure it was consistent and what kind of accents that I imagined for some of the characters, especially because the Lifeline is set in Somerset. So she was sort of saying, how much of a Somerset accent do you expect the characters to have? And that was a really interesting conversation to have. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's amazing really to hear those characters brought to life. And I think listening to books, it's, in a way, I think it's kind of even more of like an intimate experience than kind of reading on a page, because you are hearing the thoughts of those characters. It's like they're really there. And I mean, that to me is one of the wonderful things about audiobooks. And I love the fact that, you know, all of my books have been made into audio. I think it really, you know, both from the accessibility angle, but also just for bringing the book to life in a different way, I think is so wonderful.
No, that's great to hear. So do you have a lot of involvement in the kind of audiobook production, the casting, the how it sounds, that kind of thing?
So I'm usually sent suggestions of actors they're thinking of, and with kind of like a snippet of what they've done previously. So I listen through to their voices and see which I think is the kind of best fit for the book. I mean, I know some authors who narrate their own audiobooks, which I think is such a skill. I kind of think if I was writing a non-fiction book, I might, because you know, it's you, so you're kind of just being yourself. But I think it's such a skill. And I actually recently listened to a romance audiobook, which I absolutely loved, which I'd recommend, called Thank You for Listening by Julia Whelan, who is an audiobook narrator. And it's about two romance audiobook narrators who fall for each other. But it goes into great detail about the process of making audiobooks and the kind of the skill involved in reading aloud and doing the voices and getting across the emotion, and it really gave me an even greater appreciation for, you know, the craft of creating audiobooks. It is such a skill, I think.
Yeah, if we don't have that book, we definitely need to get it, because that
Yeah,
sounds right up our street.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great one.
Yeah, I think people don't realize just how strenuous it can be narrating an audiobook. Like you're in like a little dark room for hours on end, like reading and having to do loads of different takes. I think it's so impressive.
And different characters. I mean, in most instances, it's one person doing all of them. You know, sometimes some books, you know, you might have multiple, but yeah, in most instances, and certainly, you know, in the case of the Lido, it is one person, and like that's just so impressive. You know, how someone can kind of get across the different characterization.
Yeah, no, really, like Rosemary is obviously in her 80s, Kate is in her 20s. They're from completely different areas, and Claire was able to do an amazing job of narrating them both. That's kind of, it's made me think about how when you were writing, obviously Rosemary and Kate are very different characters. Was it hard for you at all to like switch back and forth from these characters and kind of get the perspectives right? As someone of that age, or their personalities?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in some ways it wasn't as hard as people might imagine. I think because I really had this sense of their commonality and the things that were the same about them. So, you know, their eventual love of swimming, their feelings of loneliness, I felt like that I could really hold on to, and then just kind of talk about in different ways. And with Rosemary's character, again, people have sometimes said, you know, was it hard writing because I was in my 20s when I wrote the book, you know, writing a character who was in her 80s. And I think I just really remembered something actually my mum said to me when I was a bit younger, where she just said, I feel the same inside, you know, I've got older and yet I'm the same person as I was when I was like 20. And that really stayed with me, this idea. So I think I was just thinking with Rosemary's character of like, okay, imagine I feel exactly the same way I feel now, and yet, you know, I'm older, I'm living in a body that isn't, you know, working in the same way that it used to. You know, I look in the mirror and I see someone who looks kind of different to how I feel inside. And I think I really tried to, just go with that, of really feeling like actually Rosemary feels in many ways like she's Kate's age. And I think that made it so much easier to write, and realizing that we do. I think, you know, I certainly feel like I feel the same now as I did, you know, a few years ago. Like, I think that just your inner sense of self doesn't really change. So that, I think, made it much easier to write, and I really enjoyed doing that.
Yeah. We are coming like towards the end, so if anyone has any more questions, please do pop them in and we'll try and get through them. I did want to talk in the session that we haven't managed to get onto yet because it's gone so quickly. But our charity helps people with different mental health conditions to access books, as books can be really helpful for dealing with that. And something that you write about in the Lido is Kate's experience with anxiety, panic attacks, and how swimming really helps her. So I wanted to ask if you could talk a bit about the sort of positive effects on mental health that outdoor swimming can have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's being studied a lot more now, and there are some sort of initial studies into the benefits of definitely swimming, but also cold water swimming in particular, and that kind of like rush of endorphins you get from being in the cold water. It's something I can kind of attest to personally. I feel like outdoor swimming especially like really helped me when I was going through some similar experiences that Kate was, you know, struggling with anxiety and just not feeling like I'd found my feet. And I think for me, swimming is unlike any other activity in that I think it's so meditative that, you know, you can't do anything else. Like, your phone is on the side. It's one of the few times where you're not constantly connected, where, you know, it's just you and water. And I find that my brain it switches off, but I also am able to think in the water in a way that is sometimes harder on dry land. And And yeah, also the community aspect, you know, to have people that you're regularly seeing and kind of the conversations that you have in the water. I find it's often easier to open up about the big things when you're sort of swimming side by side with someone. And that's something I go into more in the sequel, The Lifeline, as well. But yeah, I think that sense of both the community but also the kind of physical act of swimming and disconnecting and moving your body. I mean, for me, just moving my body in whatever way, you know, whether that's swimming or kind of yoga, has always just been so beneficial for my mental health, and is something that I kind of have become stricter on over time. I'm like, okay, I kind of have to do this. And yeah, I guess I wanted to share that with other people who maybe already have experienced that with swimming, or, you know, might consider giving it a go, and it may be bringing them the same kind of benefits that it's brought me.
Yeah, no, it really has opened my eyes to the idea of going swimming. I've been trying to go walking. I think with working from home as well, a lot of people, you don't realize it can get to the end of the day and you haven't really left your desk, or you haven't really moved. You've just been sat there like for the whole day, and then when it gets later, you don't really want to go out. But I think swimming is a great way to do that, to have something else to get your body moving. So yeah, I really appreciate it. For one, I definitely will be trying outdoor swimming.
Yeah, and I also think swimming particularly, it's such a kind of gentle form of exercise. I recently had surgery, and swimming was one of the few things, like the first things I could get back to, you know, when I couldn't go out for a run or, you know, even go for a long walk. You know, the water is just so kind of supportive, and I think that is such an amazing thing as well, that I feel like it's and I know lots of people who have found the, you know, cold water especially really beneficial for things like chronic pain, and, you know, just that the benefits of getting into the water. I think there are so many benefits, and it's great to see that, you know, I love hearing stories from people who've also found that experience as well in the water.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of people have read the Lido and gone on to start swimming, which hopefully I will soon. I feel like it's probably the wrong season for it. But I need to stop saying that. I need to stop being put off by the cold water. That's one of the main points. But yeah, we are coming to the end of the session. So I think I'm going to have to start wrapping up things, sadly. But thank you so much, everyone, for all of your amazing questions and comments. It's been great to hear from you. And thank you, of course, Libby, for joining us today. It's been such a nice conversation.
Oh, thank you so much. And yeah, like you said, thank you so much for all the questions. It was really great to hear all your thoughts and to chat about reading and books and swimming.
Yeah, thank you. Just as a reminder, everyone, before we leave, we're Listening Books. We're an audiobook charity. You can find lots of different books, including all of Libby Page's books and the Lido. So yeah, if you do want to listen, please do join us. Oh, we've got some comments coming in. Lovely talk. Thank you, Libby and Annabel. I haven't been brave enough to swim outside, but it is on my bucket list to give it a go. Yeah, me too. Probably in the summer, as you say, Annie. So thank you, everyone. It's been really great. Thanks. Bye. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye.